These last 2 months have been crazy for Beyond Meat stock. We've seen the price fluctuate all the way up to $194 per share. Then it crashed, went down to $142. Then it went back up into the 150s, and then it crashed again and went down to 125. Now it's trading at around 142. What can we expect going forward? What can we expect in December of 2020, and what can we expect in 2021 and 2022? So on the one hand, you've got your pundits on TV saying that Beyond Meat is ridiculously overvalued, that you'd have to be insane to buy it at its current valuation. It's all hyped up. It's got nowhere to go but down in the medium to long term. And, on the flip side, you've got pretty much everybody online saying that, Beyond Meat is the next Tesla and it's going to 10x in the next 5 years. Beyond Meat is going to change the world and blah, blah, blah. So who's right? Well, the reality is there is no definitive right answer right now. Anything is possible when it comes to Beyond Meat. And Beyond Meat, you've got this company that has first mover advantage in an industry that's growing exponentially, the alternative meat industry. I mean, you've got the CEO, Ethan Brown, who wants to change the world. He wants to change the way that we eat. So, of course, there's reasons to be bullish about this company long term, but on the other hand, it's supposed to be a growth company, and the 2020 third quarter earnings report showed a lower gross profit margin than the 2019 third quarter earnings report did. So what's going on there? That's not growth. That's called backsliding. So I believe that there are two major catalysts that can significantly affect Beyond Meat in the short to medium term. The first of those two catalysts is Beyond Meat's relationship with McDonald's. Now, Beyond Meat has a handful of other partners, like, they got Denny's and Dunkin' Donuts and A&W, Fridays, just to name a few, but, none of these other partnerships even come close to bringing to the table what McDonald's could bring to the table as a potential partner. Okay, so let's listen to this interview with McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczinski, and we'll start to notice what part of the problem is here. There's kind of a conflict going on between Beyond Meat and McDonald's, and he tries his best to hide that conflict, but let's watch.
Can I pin you down on Beyond Meat's involvement? What are they doing?
Look at his facial expression. I mean, he knew this question was coming. I mean, you can make of that whatever you want, but that's a funny, subtle reaction there from the McDonald's CEO.
If anything?
Well, we are fortunate at McDonald's. We've got a great group of suppliers that we work with. In many cases, we work with a couple different suppliers in product categories. As you referenced, we have
So, I mean, you can imagine why the stock price went down so much, when this interview first came out, because there was all this hype around, this Beyond Meat partnership with McDonald's, and here the McDonald's CEO, he's talking about how, McDonald's works with a number of great suppliers. He's reluctant to even mention Beyond Meat at all, although I think he goes on to do that.
Relationship with McPlant or with Beyond Meat, where they supported us in our Canadian test market. We haven't made a decision about how we're going to be and which suppliers are going to be supporting our global rollout there, so I don't want to comment on that.
So yeah, he's avoiding the issue completely. So first of all, it's not clear that the Beyond Meat McDonald's partnership is even going to happen at all. And secondly, it's not clear how that McPlant Burger is going to be branded. Is it going to be branded as the McPlant Burger, or is it going to be branded as the McPlant Burger with Beyond Meat? Ethan Brown, Beyond Meat CEO and Beyond Meat, they really, really want it to be the McPlant Burger with Beyond Meat, or even better would just be the McBeyond Burger, but that's never going to happen, right? But it's very important to Ethan Brown that the name Beyond Meat is included in the branding. And that's the kind of deal that they've struck with Pizza Hut and Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts has the Beyond Meat sausage, egg, and cheese sandwich. So Beyond Meat is in the name. So I mean, we're just gonna have to wait and see how this whole McDonald's partnership thing shakes out. I mean, we know that Beyond Meat did some sort of test with McDonald's in Canada. So if that went well, hopefully, McDonald's is gonna roll out the McPlant Burger with Beyond Meat in the United States. This stock price of $194 per share that we saw back on October 9th, to some extent, that probably priced in, some of this McDonald's McPlant Burger hype. So, if we get disappointing news, that it's confirmed that the McPlant Burger is not going to feature Beyond Meat, that's going to be very bad. If we get news that, as a matter of fact, it is going to be a McPlant burger with Beyond Meat, then that's going to be great news for the stock. So we just have to wait and see how this shakes out. Okay, so I believe the second major catalyst for Beyond Meat is whether or not we get a vaccine and when we get a vaccine. Now, Beyond Meat is definitely a growth stock, but to some extent it's also a recovery stock in a way. The reason for that is because Beyond Meat's profit margins in food service are much higher than their profit margins in retail. During the public health crisis, food service revenue is obviously down. People are eating out less, and people are buying more groceries, so their retail revenue is higher. But if Beyond Meat had their way, the opposite situation would be true, right? They would rather have higher food service revenue and sacrifice a little bit of their retail revenue, just because the profit margins are much better in the food service industry than they are in retail. So let's listen to this clip from the Beyond Meat third quarter earnings call. Here we have CEO Ethan Brown talking about how the pandemic affected Beyond Meat in the third quarter.
Turning specifically to our Q3 performance, we experienced the full brunt and unpredictability of COVID-19's impact for the first time in Q3, producing net revenues of $94 million, a sequential drop from record net revenues of $113 million in Q2. While the effect of COVID-19 on our food service business was offset by the unprecedented surge in retail grocery demand in the second quarter, our third quarter did not enjoy the same level of benefit and was conversely disadvantaged by consumers' stock freezers and subsequent moderation in buying following this run-up in grocery spending in the previous quarter.
So basically what he's saying here is that in quarter two, you had a situation where everyone was panic buying. People were panic buying groceries in general, including Beyond Meat. Now, although the food service profit margins are in general much better than the retail profit margins for Beyond Meat, this extra retail revenue is kind of what got them through quarter two. You didn't have that panic buying in quarter three, although you still had diminished revenue from the food service industry. And you can see the effect the pandemic had on Beyond Meat if you look at the earnings report too. I mean, look here, food service revenue in 2020 is actually worse than it was in 2019. And we're talking about a supposed growth company here. And things were worse in 2020 than they were in 2019 in Q3. The same thing with the gross profit margins. Gross profit margins were worse in Q3 of 2020 than they were in Q3 of 2019. So, the pandemic is obviously a huge factor here when it comes to Beyond Meat. If a vaccine were to come, that would really help the stock a lot. Now, I love Beyond Meat as a business, not just on an ethical level. I mean, Ethan Brown and Beyond Meat are trying to make the world a better place, which is fantastic, but also just on a business level. Is the stock price overvalued? Well, I don't know. I mean, if you look at them based on what they're doing today, yes, it's overvalued. If you consider the expectation of future growth, it's not necessarily overvalued. If you look at them as a food company, yes, they're overvalued. If you look at them as a growth company, then no, they're not overvalued. I do have some concerns about Beyond Meat. I am worried about the competition, even though there's plenty of room for a bunch of different companies in the alternative meat space, which, is an industry that's just growing and growing and growing. I am concerned about, the competition, and I don't know if Beyond Meat really has a moat. I don't know if they have anything to actually keep the competition out. Obviously Beyond Meat has first mover advantage and they're the biggest player in the game right now, but what's to stop companies like, Impossible or Very Good Foods from coming in and taking some of that market space? There's a lot that's up in the air with Beyond Meat. I mean, this whole McDonald's partnership is a big question mark that's looming over the company. The vaccine, whether we're going to get a vaccine, and not just the vaccine, but whether consumer behavior will even return to the way it was pre-pandemic. Will people decide they want to go out again? They want to go back to TGI Fridays and order a Beyond Meat burger, or has that food service revenue permanently dropped off. You know, deliveries have been skyrocketing since the pandemic, and maybe people will realize that they just would rather deliver food than go out to eat. And unfortunately, you know, Beyond Meat is not very deliverable. You know, they have a partnership now with Pizza Hut that's temporary. We'll see how that goes, but you know, there's no guarantee that that's going to last. So there's a lot that's up in the air. I'm optimistic for Beyond Meat. I love them as a company. I appreciate them on an ethical level. They're definitely making the world a better place. And you know, the alternative meats industry, you know, it's a wide open runway for Beyond Meat. So you know, in that sense, I'm very bullish. Although you know, I'm not going to invest all my eggs into Beyond Meat. I'm going to wait and see what happens. And I think it's a good company to own as part of a larger portfolio of growth stocks. So let's see how it goes with Beyond Meat.